The Milwaukee Brewers have been quite busy this offseason, offloading their two best hitters from just a year ago. Hunter Renfroe and Colton Wong are no longer Milwaukee Brewers. Are they subconsciously sending us a message as fans? Plus, it is back, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. Mailbag Monday. You asked, we answered. Tune in for that. Plus, we also take a look back from the trade that just acquired last Friday with Colton Wong shipping off to Seattle for outfielder Jesse Winker and infielder Abraham Toro. And we will be joined by the Seattle Mariner expert. That's right, the Seattle Mariner expert, Ben Ranieri, who will help us try to figure out what we should expect from our newest Brewers. Stay tuned. You are Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Brewers fans, welcome back. If you're tuning in, that means this is the second chance you are giving me as your new host. Of course, I am Brandon Snide. Thank you and welcome to Locked On Brewers. Thank you for making Locked On Brewers your first listen each and every day. Do not forget, we are free and available. Free and available. Those are the words I absolutely love. Free and available wherever you can get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, and so many others. You can also follow us on Twitter at Locked On Brewers. And don't forget, we are also over there on YouTube. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. Please, if you guys are on YouTube and you have not subscribed, make that happen. Just search Locked On Brewers. Of course, you heard me before. I'm your host, Brandon Snide, a lifelong and diehard Milwaukee Brewers fan, coming to you just minutes away. Although it is a cold December morning, there's not going to be any baseball, but nonetheless, I am coming from you just minutes away from American Family Field. Of course, that is home to our Milwaukee Brewers. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. I can't tell you enough. First off, before we even get into it, my first show was Saturday over the weekend. Your guys' support, the comments, you guys reached out to me on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. The comments were amazing. So thank each and every one of you guys. It was my first show here on Locked On Brewers. We're going to get better. We're going to bring more stuff to the show. And as the year goes on, we're going to have plenty more to talk about. But the Brewers are giving us enough to talk about. They have been extremely busy this offseason, and it's only been the early part of the offseason. Sending their best hitter from a year ago, Hunter Renfroe, to the Los Angeles Angels. And then, as of Friday afternoon, their second best hitter from a year ago to the Seattle Mariners. To help me make sense of the latest trade with the Seattle Mariners, I am being joined by Ben Ranieri, formerly of Fan Nation, a part of Sports Illustrated, who covered the Mariners as a beat writer. Ladies and gentlemen, he was in the locker room. He was there. He's seen everything. He's heard it all. He is currently writing for Sea Level on Substack, covering all things Seattle Mariners. Ben, good morning. Welcome to the Locked On Brewers podcast. How are we doing?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you're there. You're part of the Seattle Mariners beat writing last year. We're just going to be honest with you, Ben. What happened to Jesse Winker last year? What was the deal? He's a new Brewer now, so we got to dive into a little bit of what Jesse Winker is. So if you could make sense of it, exactly, give me your best description of the player we're getting in Jesse Winker.
Yeah, honestly, just a super, super weird year. Came in, big trade, big acquisition. Everybody was super excited about it. He basically just started really slow, and he never started hitting. It was clear that there was some mechanical things going on. He's hit every year of his life. For those of you that don't know, minor leagues, every year of his major league career, the guy's hit. That's all he's ever done. He kind of just lost the capability to hit a fastball. And that was clear. Teams were just blowing him away above the belt with fastballs. And basically the only thing he was able to do all year was walk. He was in the 99th percentile of chase rate. For a while there, towards the end, he was tied with Juan Soto for walks in the entire league. So he just really struggled and just never really got on track. Yeah, and then the defense was a big problem. towards the end of the year, they just did not feel comfortable putting him in the outfield anymore. He had some injury concerns. At the end of the year, he had to have 2 operations, one on his knee and one on his neck, and was just really never able to get going. And yeah, it's just a rough year.
Yeah, and that's you look at his numbers. I mean, it's the most games he's played in a year in 2022. Does that add to the injury that we're seeing? I mean, is that part of it, you think? That the workload was, I mean, 136 games. His highest before that was 113, which was back in 2019. So, I mean, is he an everyday player?
You would think so.
He should be, right? I mean,
clearly,
I would think so.
Yeah. This is one of those trades to me where obviously there was some clubhouse things that happened. And it's one of those trades where you're trading him to Milwaukee knowing that he's going to rebound and he's going to hit, because he's hit his entire life. He's an everyday player. I mean, he's got the clear struggles. He's one of the best hitters in the league over the past 5 years against right-handed pitching. Really struggles with left-handed pitching. So, if you have somebody that can take some pressure off of him against lefties, then he's pretty much an everyday player. You can normally plug him in there against righties. I mean, he also DH'd a lot more this year than he ever has, because he's been playing in the National League, obviously, before the implementation of the DH. So, I think he's going to be an everyday player. I think he's going to hit. It just wasn't going to work out for him in Seattle. It's just one of those things where they had to cut bait with him. But definitely the bat is worth taking a chance on.
What was and you're not wrong, because before we got on the show, Ben and I were talking about Winker's splits here in Milwaukee. 344, 440, 591 with a 1.032 OPS. That will definitely work for an offense that struggled a lot last season. Now, when you covered Seattle, you have your thumb on the vibe, on the energy of that city, that team. That was a big trade to acquire him at that time. Obviously, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, one of the better years Seattle's had in quite some time. Yep. Maybe the best year in the last decade. Yeah. What were the thoughts surrounding Winker last year? I mean, we're fans, because it was his first year in Seattle. Obviously, he had a big year in 2021. He was obviously went to the All-Star game. The trade was, I want to say send shockwaves, but it was a pretty good trade at the time. It was a big trade. What were the fans' thoughts surrounding Winker? How were they feeling during all this when he was struggling?
First off, everybody was super juiced when they traded for Winker.
Right.
And they also got Eugenio Suarez in that deal. And he was kind of the afterthought. And it's completely turned into the Eugenio Suarez trade, because he's become basically a Seattle legend after his performance last year. Awesome clubhouse guy in a super productive year. And honestly, fans were pretty cool with Winker.
Okay.
He got in the big brawl in June. That definitely gave him some leeway for some of his struggles. That was kind of a big moment for him. And then kind of in July, when the dog days started to hit, his defense definitely wore thin on some of his teammates and fan base as well. But
okay,
the excitement was definitely there at the beginning of the year for him specifically in that deal, but it definitely turned into the Eugenio Suarez deal.
Interesting. Now you turn the side to the other part of the trade. Now, obviously, Colton Wong, fan favorite here in Milwaukee, to put it mildly. I mean, just an all around awesome guy. Had one of his best years. It was weird for him last year because he played the third. It was like the year of the threes. I said it on my show on Saturday. Third most games in his career, third highest OPS plus, and then hit the most home runs of his career. It was kind of just a weird year, but he missed a little bit of time with some injury. But he leaves a big void here for Milwaukee here, Ben. We do not know who our second baseman is. Out of the top 30 prospects in the farm system currently, there's only one second baseman, and he's currently at high A. So you're probably not going to see him for another year, 2, maybe 3 years. Abraham Toro. Now, he's a guy that can play second and third, right?
Yep.
Okay. So what are we looking at out of Abraham? What did the Brewers get out of Abraham Toro? Who is he? Should we be excited? Should we not be excited? Make me feel better, Ben.
Okay. I'll try my best. Abraham Toro he's interesting. First off, I wouldn't expect that, and I don't know this, but I wouldn't expect that would be their plan for their starting second baseman. I could be wrong. They might really love.
We have. Well, I said it on Saturday's show. I said we have more questions than answers as Brewers fans because we have no idea where the direction of this team's going. We had a new GM. The old one is quote unquote taking a advisor role. Just traded away our two best hitters from last year. We don't know what we're doing with Corbin Burns. We don't know what we're doing with Brandon Woodruff. Christian Yelich is getting paid more money than everybody in the world. So we don't know where we're going with it. But if you don't think he's a everyday second baseman, go ahead and finish what you were going to say.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, the trade that acquired him initially was one of the most controversial moves of Jerry DiPoto's tenure in Seattle. The team it was in 2021 at the trade deadline. The team had just won one of the biggest games in the last 10 years. They beat the Astros, came back down, I think 7 runs. Day after that, they trade their closer, who was Kendall Graveman at the time, and like the clubhouse guy on that team, trade him and Rafael Montero to the Astros for Abraham Toro. And Toro was a nice prospect coming up. He's highly coveted. The Mariners front office had looked at him for a long time. Switch hitter, can play second and third. And literally the next day after they acquired him, he hit a grand slam off of Kendall Graveman. And for the first month that he was there, he was hitting, I think it was over 350. He started out super hot, and he kind of was carried that off in that 2021 Mariners offense for a little bit in September, August of 2021. And then last year, he kind of fell off a cliff. I mean, he hasn't had a good track record in the major leagues. Just a lot of soft contact. He pops up in the infield a lot. He struggled a little bit. His defense at second base is probably a little below average to average. And he's got a ton of power from the left side, more of kind of like a line drive from the right side contact.
Okay.
But he really struggles with his average and kind of getting on base. He just also never really had consistent playing time last year. Scott Service, the Mariners manager, loves him and loved him in his time in Seattle for his versatility. And he hit some very clutch home runs, but he just was never really able to find consistent at-bats because of his hitting.
Talking with Ben Ranieri here, who is covering the Mariners for the Sea Level on Substack. I asked him to make me feel better. Ben, you failed to make me feel better.
The upside is definitely there. He's somebody that has been coveted for a long time by a lot of teams. So if
we'll see if the Brewers can unlock him. The same thing with Winker. We're not done with Ben. We're going to discuss exactly what exactly is going on with Jesse Winker. If you guys are kind of new to the issue, there's been some rumblings of the newest Brewer, Jesse Winker, having maybe some clubhouse issues with his former team. We're going to dive into that. We're also going to dive into more of Abraham Toro, and I'm going to make Ben make me feel better. And plus, a look ahead to Mailbag Monday. But before we do that, speaking of being frustrated, have you guys ever been frustrated with renting cars? I got a solution for you. Toro, speaking of Toro, is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Toro, you can book any car you want, wherever you want, from a community of local hosts across the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia. Forget boring cars and find your drive right now at Toro.com. And talking with Ben Ranieri here, who covers the Seattle Mariners formerly of Fan Nation, a part of Sports Illustrated. He currently covers Mariners for the Sea Level on Substack, covering all things Seattle Mariners. Ladies and gentlemen, he is in the clubhouse. He is around the team. He knows everything there is to know about these Seattle Mariners. And if you've been living under a rock over the weekend, they made a trade with those Seattle Mariners. Long time. I shouldn't say long time. 2 years with the Milwaukee Brewers. Colton Wong, longtime major league player, I should say. 2 years with the Milwaukee Brewers, has been traded to the Seattle Mariners. We get Jesse Winker, formerly in Cincinnati, spent a year in Seattle, and Abraham Toro's kind of been around the league for a little bit. But Ben, there have been some rumblings about Jesse Winker in the clubhouse. I know a local radio station out there was discussing some of those, I don't want to say issues, some of those rumors. Can you provide anything about Jesse Winker in that locker room, in that clubhouse, excuse me?
Yeah, I think it was Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times, went on 710 ESPN Seattle, and he had some things to say about the organization and their feelings about Jesse. Obviously a super frustrating year for him, and to my knowledge, there's been no past struggles with him in a clubhouse.
That's good.
He definitely had some challenges this year. I think it was probably a super frustrating year. And I know there was some frustration from the organization in terms of his preparation. Maybe just, I don't know the full extent of it, but somewhat of his defensive preparation, and just being ready to go. And especially compared to a guy like Mitch Haniger, who's been with the Mariners for a while, is like the ultimate guy in terms of preparation. And I think the quote that Divish used on 710 ESPN Seattle was that Winker's act kind of started to wear thin, and some of that defensive struggles and kind of not necessarily maybe putting in the same amount of time on his defense that he should be.
Okay.
I think that was kind of a catalyst for some of the locker room frustrations. And obviously he had a really tough year, which with injuries and just performance as well. So
which is kind of weird, right? Because they had such a good year, Seattle. Did he? I mean, it wasn't a fitting in issue, right? Like he on the field, off the field, there were no notable issues.
It seemed to me that through the first half of the year, I mean, he got in the big brawl with the Angels, and he really proved himself to his teammates. I think he kind of definitely stood up for his teammates. But that Mariners team prepares to win like no other team. I mean, I haven't been around a lot of teams, but from everything that I've heard, they prepare like none other. They do extra defensive work every single day on the infield. Perry Hill kind of runs the infield, and he is notorious for this extra pregame work, and it shows. They're one of the best teams in the league in run prevention, and Jesse was not a part of that. He was one of the worst defensive players in the league. I think he was the worst left fielder in the league defensively. So I think that just kind of started to wear thin maybe on his teammates towards the end of the year, and kind of some of the social stuff started to deteriorate from what I could tell. And he wasn't able to go to the playoffs because he wasn't able to join the team in Toronto for the playoffs or at home. He had a knee and a neck procedure done, which also could have been a part of the reason why he wasn't doing as much pregame defensive work and things like that.
When you look at Jesse Winker, and he's and coming to Milwaukee, we're not sure exactly. Again, we're trying to make sense of this offseason as Brewers fans. I kind of alluded to it in the first part of the show there. We give away our two best hitters. We're loaded in the farm. It felt like it was going to be a year where we were going to see some of those younger prospects up in the major leagues. We saw a few of them there last year. Garrett Mitchell, Ruiz was up here for September. Winker splits. We talked about it as well. Loves American Family Field. Concerns with any of his injuries going forward. Neck infusion. There was something with his neck. I mean, can you elaborate on any of those major injuries?
To my knowledge, it kind of seemed to me like at first a lot of people honestly thought that it was kind of a phantom IL sort of situation. But I think it's pretty clear at this point that watching him play at the end of the year, it was pretty clear that he was dealing with something. We didn't really know what. We still don't really know what. I think it was a neck fusion. I think so. I mean, there's always with a neck thing. There's always
That's
There's
questionable.
You use your upper body a lot in baseball, clearly, as a hitter. And, I mean, there's always a chance that that's going to impact him long term. But to my knowledge, the last thing I had heard, because until recently, there was still a chance that he was going to be playing for the Mariners. We just didn't know if they were going to be able to trade him for anything of value. So I had heard that he was going to be swinging a bat in January is what the last that I had heard.
That would work. Because the question with, Brewers fans really is what, and I said it on Saturday's show, what the vision is for this team. Now, Winkers, I don't want to say he's not going to be a part of this team. He's a free agent this year. Toro's a guy that's got 4 years of control. It was kind of, I don't know what else was out there for Colton Wong. He's also on the last year of his deal. You're sitting there on Friday afternoon, Ben, and you're kind of, maybe you're scrolling on Twitter. If you're like me, I'm kind of always on Twitter. I hate to admit it, but I kind of am. Kind of have to be. What were your thoughts on that when that trade first went down? Now, again, best year you guys probably had in quite some time. Colton Wong, Gold Glove, 15 home runs last year. A phenomenal year defensively. He's one of the best second basemen. What were your initial thoughts of that trade?
So I had heard for a while that the Mariners were interested in signing Colton Wong actually before the Brewers did.
Okay.
And
which shocked Brewers fans real quick.
Yeah.
That came, no pun intended, out of left field.
Yeah. And the Mariners were, I think, fully expected to sign him, and ownership pulled out the rug from Jerry Dipoto in adding that third-year option. And that's why he ultimately ended up choosing the Brewers. So Wong's been somebody that I know they've had interest in for a while. I knew that they had checked in with him this offseason, and I think it didn't surprise me at all. I mean, I'm a lot more excited about it than I think most of Mariners Twitter is. People are actually pretty upset about it for some reason.
Is that the Toro or the Winker part of it?
It's the Colton Wong part of it, actually. They're upset about getting Colton Wong instead of one of the free agent shortstops, which is confusing to me because you have to view the whole offseason as a whole, and there's still more moves to be made. But I don't think any fans were really too upset about trading Winker or Toro.
Interesting.
But I knew the interest in Wong was real. I think they wanted to check in and do their due diligence in some other places first, and then I know that they'd been linked with Wong forever, so I knew that was probably going to be an option.
As a Brewers fan, Ben, treat him well. We love Colton Wong, such a tremendous individual on the field, in the clubhouse, in the community. He is going to be missed. It's only been 2 years with Colton Wong, but he's one of those guys where it just feels like he's been around forever. Probably because he was with St. Louis forever, and we, Brewers play St. Louis quite often. Ben, I just want to thank you for your time. Appreciate the insight. Before I do let you go, give the folks a little bit of insight on where they can find your work, where they can find you maybe on Twitter, anything else that you got going on.
Yep. You can find me from time to time on Locked On Mariners. You can find me on Twitter at BenRanieri10, and then you can subscribe to my Substack, which is sealevel.substack.com.
Ben, before I let you go real quick, and I got about 30 seconds, I got to make this quick with you. Packers won yesterday against Chicago. Were you happy?
I am happy. I'm pumped.
It's a weird, right? It's because I'm a Packer fan too. I'm a Packer fan too, and you always say, you sit back in your couch like, I don't really care if they win. I want a good draft pick. But then you get into the fourth quarter and there's 4 minutes left. You're like, okay, it's Chicago.
You realize you're playing the Bears, and it sets in that you
and it starts to hit you. I couldn't agree more. Ben, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I will continue to follow you. All of you guys should follow him. You can check all his stuff out. And again, if you have any questions, shoot them towards Ben's way. And hey, we'll see what this trade looks like maybe a year from now, maybe 6 months from now. But nonetheless, you guys are a big part of the show. I told you that when I took over. I tweeted out, I put a video out. You guys asked and I answered. I mentioned it at the top of the show, but it is time, ladies and gentlemen. Mailbag Monday is back. You know what else is back? Sports betting. And what better place to start other than BetOnline? BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. Esports is really growing up here. We've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you better love this podcast first. But you can find all of those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Brewers fans, it is back and it is time to answer your questions. I want you guys to know two things. Number one, I appreciate you. Number two, this show is nothing without you guys. So I want to make sure that you understand that I want you to be a big part of this show, and I need your help with this show. Okay, it's a lot. This is a fun team to cover, a lot of questions, but that's what's fun about it. We get to dive into all of it. And we get to figure out exactly who's coming where, who's going to play, who isn't going to play, who's getting traded, what is Matt Arnold doing. It's fun, and guess what? It's a game, and we're gonna have fun with it. So you guys answered, you guys asked, and I answered. It's back, and it's time to answer your questions. So we're going to go ahead and jump on Twitter. This is from @thebugman. If we are out of contention by the trade deadline, do you see one or both of Burns and Woodruff traded, kind of starting a rebuild? To answer, short answer, yes, I do. I don't know if it's going to be Burns, but I think it would be Woodruff before Burns. But I do kind of feel like this Milwaukee Brewers team is getting close to what is a rebuild. You trade your first and second best hitter. You heard Ben Ranieri, who covers the Mariners, guys. He's in that locker, in that clubhouse. He's all over that place. He wasn't so crazy about the trade, sending Winker and Toro over to Milwaukee. He isn't sure if Toro's going to be an everyday starter. Winker, a little bit of some injury concerns. And again, only 1 year left. So again, I'm not sure if he's going to be the future in Milwaukee. And again, that would leave you to expect that these younger guys are going to play, which would mean, hey, you're going to probably have a little bit of a rebuild there. So the Bugman, thank you. Again, we're over on Twitter at MVP Nacho. He drops in and says, how much playing time do you think Keston Hiura gets? Here's an answer I got for you. However much playing time Keston Hiura earns. Does that make sense? Because I think he can be an everyday starter. I think at times he should be. But again, where is he going to fit in? Defensively, and not only defensively, offensively. Right? That's what got him here, was his offense. You have 4 strikeouts. You're constantly not making contact with the baseball. You're failing on the defensive end. I think he's got to find a position that fits him well, that he's comfortable playing, and maybe his bat will follow him from behind. But I think, to answer your question, I don't think it's going to be a whole lot. Not right away. I think he'll have to earn it. Let's head over onto Facebook from my guy, Big Mike. The hot stove is warming up. Besides locking up Burns and Woodruff, what other big moves do you see for 2023? Not a lot, but big moves within the organization. What I mean by that, younger guys, Sal Frelick, Jackson Chourio, maybe. Garrett Mitchell was up here. Ruiz was up here. Think you're going to see those guys again. What do you got in Ethan Small? He's one that's still really kind of, I think, hasn't been unlocked yet. So he's another one. What do you have in Robert Gasser, who you traded last year for Josh in the Josh Hader trade? So I think there's some guys. What are you going to do with Terrain? I mean, you're loaded offensively. Joey Weimer's going to eventually get up here. I think that's what you see as the big moves. I don't think they're going to make a big move via trade or free agent. Personally, I don't. I hope I'm wrong, but that's kind of my guess. From Nick over, I believe he's on Twitter. Yes. Do you see us trading for a catcher? I do not. You got Carantini, Mario Feliciano, who's I thought he had a pretty good year last year. down in AAA in the international game. I think he's going to be a guy that splits times with Victor. I don't think they're going to trade again. Peyton Henry's down there too. I just don't see it really being a position where they're going to prioritize. I think, and again, I'm speaking for them, for the Brewers, that is, of course, I think they're prioritizing starting pitching, and that's locking up either Burns, Woodruff, or even both, and figuring out what they have in guys that are already on this roster. And I think the bullpen's another thing that's got to be addressed, and we haven't even gotten to the bullpen, but I promise you we will. What is Devin Williams' role? Where are they going with the middle relievers? There's a ton of questions surrounding what was a strength. But I got time for two more. So let's do two more. Let's go from, let's see here, the Cheerio fan account. When do we see Sal Frelick? I kind of answered that. That's a great question. Look, if it's me, guys, and this may not be popular, I bring them all up. I do. I just do. And again, that might not be popular. Maybe Jackson takes a little bit, and I think he's going to probably start out he'll probably start in AA, but he's going to be in AAA soon. Frelick, Weimer, Terrain, Garrett Mitchell was already up here. Ruiz, bring him up, man. Bring in Ethan Small. Bring in Robert Gasser. See what you got. See what you got. What do you got to lose? Do you think you're competing for a World Series? I don't think so. Not right now. Seattle, I think, is head and shoulders above us just in the division. And that doesn't count throughout the rest of the NL. And again, don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer, but that's just a little bit of my take. I would like to see them all come up. So that's kind of my question. And Bill, he's over on Twitter. A good review Bill gave me from the first episode. So shout out to Bill. He's going to be our last question of the day. He goes, what one player are you most excited to see at any level? So he says, pick a Mudcat, a Rattler, Shucker, or Sound. The layup answer here, Bill, is Jackson Chourio, but I'm gonna digress off of that. Mine is Esteury Ruiz. Again, is a guy that you picked up last year in the Josh Hader trade. He is insanely fast. I mean, he is insanely fast. I don't remember offhand the amount of stolen bases he had in AAA. I'm trying to pull him up now, but they were nuts. Like he was, here it is right here. 85 stolen bases in the minors last year. So he's a guy, we saw him a little bit in September. He's not going to probably be your everyday starting outfielder, but he's a guy that I'm most excited to see because he's a guy, I think when you get on base, he can create problems. And he's going to put the pressure on the opposing defense. So he's a guy, I think, again, you could say any of these guys, Frelick, Weimer, Terrain, Garrett Mitchell was phenomenal. Again, Gasser can small fix things. That's another one that I'd be excited for. But thank you guys all for the questions. My goodness, thank you. First time we're doing Mailbag Monday since I've taken the show over. So many questions have came in. And again, if I didn't get to your question, I do apologize. I will try my best. Next Monday, I'll try to save that question from this week and get it to you next week. But thank you guys. Thank you for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On Brewers podcast everywhere you get your podcast. That's right. Google, Spotify, Apple, all the good apps. There's like 100 apps. I searched podcasts on the App Store, and there was like 100 different podcast apps. We're on all of them, including the Odyssey app. Check it out. You guys can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I created a Facebook account. Sometimes it's just a little easier to connect with you guys over there. Just searched Locked On Brewers. You can also follow the show on Twitter, Locked On Brewers. And then you can follow me if you so do choose to want to do that at Brandon_Snide. Thank you guys for making Locked On Brewers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, I will continue to take a look at the offseason scenarios for our Milwaukee Brewers, and I will take a guess. We are going to start putting this roster together, and we're going to do it together. I'm going to ask for some of your help and what it could look like come April. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you have a great week. I know it's only Monday. Put a smile on your face, and as always, go Brewers.